Welcome to FlixChats, the podcast hosted by FlixBus, where we explore the fascinating world of travel and mobility. Get ready for inspiring conversations, interesting stories, and much more. Let's go!
Hello everyone, and welcome in this very special episode of FlixChat podcast. My name is Kamila Zalewska. I'm business director of FlixBus in Poland, Baltic States, and Ukraine, and today I will be your host. And the reason why this episode is so special is because of a very special guest who is here with me in our Warsaw office, André Schwämmlein, co-founder and CEO of FlixBus and FlixTrain globally. Welcome, André. It's a great pleasure to have you here.
Hi, Camilla. Great to be here.
André, Flix is present in 43 countries. It's 4 continents. The company has disrupted bus market all over the world. And all that started only 11 years ago. What kind of a feeling is that to be a founder of such a company, global company?
The funny thing is you don't think about that a lot. So you usually work and the job hasn't changed fundamentally in one step. It changes gradually over time. The company gets gradually larger. So your job changes only very small increments. So it's not that you get up in the morning and think of, wow, this has become so big, but it's rather, okay, what's on the schedule? What do I have to do? And so you slide into that. And therefore, the only moments where you reflect about that is special moments like when you first enter a country, when you travel to, for example, I was in India, and then you realize when you land in Delhi, okay, this is crazy. I mean, it's only 11 years and now you see green buses in India. And then you realize how big it has become, and then it's a bit overwhelming for a second, and you're very proud. But then you very quickly go into operational mode again.
And when you look back at the first months or years of FlixBus, have you ever thought that it will become so big, so global?
If you look at our first business plan, and it was only like 5 years in the future, it already was planned as a European story, and obviously we had the US in mind. But I think it has for sure become much larger and much more successful than we have hoped for. I mean, obviously we thought the market is ready for disruption and there is need for our product. But actually, I mean, it got much better and much larger than we anticipated back then.
So what is the next dream then, if this goal was already achieved?
I'm still motivated a lot by what happens every day in terms of what we as a company have as an opportunity. So I think there's so many opportunities out there in terms of countries, products, ideas, and we have an amazing team and technology to do that. So it's less about the one big thing that you want to achieve. It's more about there are so many opportunities and there are ideas for the next 10, 20, 30 years that get you up in the morning and that you want to see come to life. And this is, so it's less one thing, but more many things that this company can still achieve.
You said that US was part of the first business plan. So I have to ask this question. Did you plan to take over Greyhound from the very beginning, or was it just an opportunity that came your way?
We always thought that if we are successful in the US, we looked at in Europe that we can also be successful in the US. And there was a good example of Megabus who entered the market, built alongside Greyhound a new business, intercity travel, but they then stagnated. And so we saw the opportunity that in the US market there's more to do. And when we started in the US, we were very, very few people. At the beginning we were Jochen, myself, the former MD, Pierre, and like 2 or 3 people additionally in a room together, and we were planning the US launch. So like 6, 7 people in there.
How old were you back then?
I don't know, about 36 or something, like 35. And the group, we had nothing. I mean, we didn't have a bus partner, we didn't have any customer in the US, but we started about shaping how it would look like over time. And then after an hour or half an hour, the question came up, but what happens to Greyhound if we execute on that? And the hypothesis was we will reinvent the market, and at the end, Greyhound will either shrink and over time disappear, or will become part of Flix. So it was not the idea when we started, but we know that when we start a market and we are successful and the team successfully pulls off a great strategy, without any doubt, we also will have to think about what happens then in consolidation. So yes, it was from day one in our option space that Greyhound could become part of Flix or shrink over time. But yes, and you could say we are not arrogant, but we are confident in that we can achieve these things, because obviously it's 6 people. Greyhound is 100 years old. We have nothing, so you could say this is absurd that we think about things like this. But I think it shows the mentality of Flix. We believe in the power of this company and the power of this team, that we can execute on that kind of strategy. And it was only a couple of years later that we bought Greyhound.
Wow, that's an amazing story. And from the very beginning, when was the moment when you really started to believe in this Flix idea of a global company?
Obviously, there were a couple of defining moments where you realized that your idea picks up. And when we worked around 2 years before there was the first bus on the street. So it was a very long time. We had to self-motivate your preparation, and only PowerPoint and Excel mode, meeting investors, meeting bus companies. So I met hundreds of bus companies. And when we realized it's going to actually happen was when you see the first bus. I mean, then it becomes real. It was not the launch date. It was like a safety training just 2 weeks before the launch. But you see a branded bus and you realize, wow, it's not even only a contract, it's now reality. It will happen. I mean, this bus will drive and it will happen. And then you realize passengers book it and you see first full buses. And then you another moment where you realize, wow, it's actually not only a hypothesis, people actually like the product. So this momentum of more buses, more customers, and this flywheel going kept us going for the first couple of years. And with the acquisition of Mein Fernbus and the merger of the two companies, this was something when we saw, okay, the competition in Germany will be different after that, and we will be the clear market leader. And that we had the feeling, okay, this now can become far more than a German startup. This can be a European, a global story. So I think this were the changing moments for us when we realized we are onto something really big.
You are now describing a dream of many young entrepreneurs who are starting their own startup. Are there any special experience or education or qualities that you had back then that help you to make it real, make it successful?
We as founders, and Jochen is taking the lead on that, are mainly also investing into startups. So we meet a lot of founders, we meet a lot of great entrepreneurs who want to build something. And I think there are, of course, things you have to be good at, but the most important part is at the end building a really good team. And this is what we see crucial. And I mean, I did consulting before that. It was a helpful school, so it was a good job as an entrepreneur. But I don't think you need a certain job, a certain education. It's about obviously
mentality.
It's about it's more about culture, more about finding great people, leading a team, and less about I'm the most clever person in the room. That doesn't count that much. I mean, it's not the most clever person that builds big companies, and I don't think I'm especially clever. So it's more about finding the right people, building the right team, and then following in a very long-term time horizon and belief in that. I think this belief, what I just mentioned also in our US expansion, this has always driven us, because no company ever works perfectly all the time. Things go wrong. All things you can imagine will go wrong. You will do hundreds of mistakes. So resilience is key to really think, okay, I learned something, we fix it, and now we do the next step, because you will have hundreds of setbacks. And so I think it's more about mentality of building great team, working on negative things and resilience than having the one great idea and being brilliant. I think that doesn't solve it if you're not maybe Elon Musk.
Were there moments you wanted to quit? Like, really?
There were moments where my job was not a lot of fun, to be honest. I mean, most recent, obviously, the pandemic was something where after a while you struggle with yourself, because obviously on my point on resilience, on like always thinking of no, we can fix it. Something terrible happened, but we will fix it somehow. This is somehow, of course, tested if you're like 2 years in a pandemic. And I know at the end the team also looks to me in terms of, okay, what is your perspective as the one that has to tell us in which direction we are going. And there have been moments where you struggle and where you think, am I right with my belief? The good thing is I always had with Daniel and Jochen people who I trust and I could openly talk to, and now also with our management team we have a very open exchange, and that's very important because if you're alone you cannot build this resilience. You need also a strong leadership team together with you, otherwise you feel alone and then maybe you lose confidence.
So for the young entrepreneurs that might be listening to us, what would be your advice if they are maybe doubting themselves or struggling?
I think it's all about selecting the right team, having a good discussion around you, because no company can be founded alone and you will need this to get through all the ups and downs. So and this was something we were, I think with Jochen and Daniel, 2 amazing co-founders or 3 co-founders together, which were very complementary. But it was really a game changer when we hired really top people, and so they take over responsibility and so on. So this company was mainly built of the team and the culture and having great people taking responsibility, and less of genius founders who knew the way. That was not the case. We had to invent everything on the go, and that was mainly done by the team.
And this first team, managers, did they influence business much, or did they change your first initial plan?
I think if I reflect on what this company is, it's a result of the work of every individual manager that we hired, and this can be in the headquarters, but this most prominently in the countries. I mean, the success of the countries are not a result of Munich knowing where the way should go, but people in a team, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people taking responsibility and say, this is the country we built, this is the image we have. And obviously we can provide funding, technology, strategic advice. We challenge countries, but at the end it's a startup in a startup. And so yes, I think every incremental hire we do influences the company in a massive way. And therefore, yes, I think this company was built by the ideas of the team.
Is there anybody who inspires you? Do you have a guru or someone?
Honestly, not that much. So I try to learn from others. So I speak with other founders, but I have a hard time believing that others know how to solve your problems. So I kind of lost that belief that you might have in the beginning. And also if we today are as business angels investing in startups, obviously then young entrepreneurs sometimes have the image, okay, now I have the Flix guys, and if I ask Jochen, he can solve something I can not solve. But that's not the case. I mean, we can only give advice. We have experience on one company, but that does not mean that just because we are successful in over 40 countries, I can tell anyone how to internationalize a business. I can give recommendations, I can give opinions, but I don't have the belief that I can solve it, and therefore I leave it always with the founders to like find their own way. And I always tell them, speak to more people, collect opinions, and then form your own opinion. And this is the same way I do it. And most advice and opinions I get from inside Flix, to be honest. So I try to listen to all the people I meet. That's why, for example, I love these country trips where I meet the team. And it's not about I go to someone and ask, hey, do you have a solution for me? But hey, what is working well, what's not working well, what's in your mind? And I try to collect a lot of context and then form my own opinion. So it's not a person I look up to, it's more listening to my team and the people at Flix to at the end form an opinion, which I know I should rather be right, but therefore I should have listened to 10, 20, 30 people before.
Have you ever thought of writing a book with your tips, recommendations, how to build a successful startup?
No, at the moment we are writing the story. Writing the book is something when you're done with the story.
Maybe in another 10 years.
Yeah, but the good thing in the digital age, everything is digitalized. Yeah, you have all the emails, and we obviously the collection of funny, crazy, and amazing stories is insane. I mean, behind everything that we see out there, there are fantastic stories, and that's what I tell also people who join Flix newly. When I do these introduction speeches, I usually say, you are now part of a story that is not finished, so write your own part of the story. And I think maybe sometime we will reflect, but I'm not sure if we write a book.
So we are writing chapter 11 now.
Yeah, seems so.
André, and does your personal life aligns with Flix values? Like the simplest thing, do you use public transportation?
Yeah, I think I align very well with Flix because you can't separate too much what kind of personality you have in the job, which you spend so much time in, and your personal life. Obviously, I'm acting differently in my family than in the company, but your base values are not that different. So yes, I love public transport, and I ride with my bike, and obviously I try to teach my kids on how to become good persons, and that staying humble, because this is something that we Flix are. So I think it aligns well, but obviously you don't need to be the same person to your family than to your company, because at the end you also have a role which comes in the company with a position. So and I'm aware that how I am in Flix is partially also driven by the position that I have. So if I would change the position, or someone else would take that position, my role would change, and therefore I would act differently. So I think it's a mix of your personality and the role that you have in that moment.
What was the last time you took a FlixBus? What was the last destination you took?
New York, Boston, about a couple of weeks back. I think that was the last FlixBus ride, and then the Flix train Berlin, Hamburg, also a couple of weeks back. So I try to use the product as much as possible, because first of all, I really like the way of traveling. And on the other hand, obviously, it's for me great to experience the product, see the customers, and get a feeling of what's actually happening.
Do you talk to passengers when you're on a Flix train or FlixBus?
I rather listen to passengers. Sometimes I ask, but I try not to be the Flix guy, because then you get a shaded image, which is different. So I rather observe at a bus station the drivers, the passengers, than like...
No green hoodie.
Yeah, it's always, if you wear green at a bus station, you're naturally the customer service contact point.
Yes, I know. Is it true that you actually don't own a car? I've heard such rumors.
Yeah, that's an old story, to be honest. So meanwhile, I own one car because I usually don't drive in Munich, because I think driving in cities is incredibly stupid. So I love public transport. I would never come up with the idea to drive to the office with my car. But
so what public transportation do you use in Munich to get to the office?
Subway, train, buses, everything. So and it's, I mean, at the end you can do emails, you can read, so it's always more efficient than in your car. So I hate sitting in traffic in cars. But obviously if kids and you want to visit the grandparents who live on the countryside, owning a car is beneficial. So I think it's mainly a mix of options. And obviously sometimes I have to fly, sometimes I can take a bus, a train, a car. So it's not about being dogmatic. It's about Flix has to make an offer that people have the alternative to their own car or flying. And therefore, it's less about forcing people to a certain lifestyle, but rather opening opportunities. And this is what we do at Flix.
Do you also use buses of competition?
I usually don't use buses of competition. Unfortunately, I have to use state rail sometimes, because Flix train is still not everywhere.
That is competition.
That is competition. But the honest answer is, I mean, in most countries if there is a FlixBus, I always prefer the FlixBus. It's the better product, and it's our product. So I think it has been a very long time since I have been in a Flix country, and not in a FlixBus, but in a competitor's bus. But in many markets which will maybe come in the future, I tried out buses myself. And I mean, my family obviously is joking on that, because every time we are on holiday, it doesn't matter where we are, I obviously go to a bus station. I may take pictures. Maybe we travel then as a family by bus, and they say, okay, we could.
So your family goes on a bus trip with you?
Yes, on holidays, if it's appropriate and acceptable for kids of a certain age, then
less than 10 hours.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe not a night trip, 12 hours across Vietnam. I think this is a tough pitch to the family. But if you travel in Mexico, a 4 hours bus ride, I mean, that's totally fine. And I think it's a great way to travel. And then I realize, there's still a lot to do for Flix in the next decades.
They say that CEOs need to grow faster than their business. Do you still have time for personal growth, or are you still learning new things?
I'm a person who questions a lot what you're doing. So I ask myself, should I do something differently? Am I looking at everything? So I would say I'm very self-reflective. And you need a mix in that position out of confidence that you will find the right things and you will do the right decisions, but you also have to challenge yourself continuously to not stop growing and still learn, because I agree with that statement to a certain extent that this company is very, very different than 5 years ago and fundamentally different than 10 years ago. So the person or the leader I was 10 years ago could not manage the company today. The honest answer is also the person I am today could not manage the company 10 years ago. So obviously you have to evolve with your company, and I have to also acknowledge where you're good at and where you're not good at, and either work on it or find a way as a workaround. Yeah, for example, I don't like networking. I love my teams, and I love being here in Warsaw, meeting with the team, having lunch, one-on-ones. I love that. But what I don't like is if there would be now a trade fair and I would have to go there and would meet 20 people, collect contacts, and then network. I don't like that. I like my teams, I like my bus partners, but I don't like networking. But for example, Daniel is a good networker and Jochen is a good networker. So I clearly saw that this is something that is valuable for the company, but where I'm not good at. So Daniel in that sense is doing that. And if you need a contact with someone, most likely Daniel and Jochen, or in meanwhile also Christoph, might have a contact. And I don't need to have it. And therefore it's all about also recognizing where you're good at and where you're not good at, and then playing where you're strong and finding good team members where you're not that strong.
So how are you learning that? Is there do you read any books, or I don't know, maybe any podcast that you could recommend? What was the last book you read, for example?
Actually, I'm reading a lot. I would say I'm reading rather 1 to 2 hours at least a day. But I'm reading mainly newspapers.
Emails.
I'm not counting emails. That would unfortunately be more than 1 or 2 hours. No, it's mainly newspapers. A lot about economy, about politics. So I try to learn from what I read about others, and less about, okay, these 10 things you have to do, but by more observing what others do, what goes wrong, what goes well, what is written about others, what I hear about others. So I try to absorb this, but find my own solution, and less about, okay, these 10 things you have to do to become a top manager. I mean, I don't believe this works for me. It's more read 100 news articles about great leaders and what works well, and you reflect yourself and say, hey, what can I learn from that? Would I have done that differently? Would I have done it the same way? Could I do it? Is my company set up in that way? Is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? So I read a lot and reflect a lot on that. I think this is the way how I try to get better.
And is there such thing as work-life balance being a CEO?
Depends on how you define it. So I know what's important for me. And the good thing is I only have to travel for teams. Usually because our customers are tens of millions, so I don't have to meet customers and travel. Like if you have a business-to-business company, you have to meet customers and important people on the customer side. I don't have to do that. And other CEOs have to travel because of suppliers. I don't have to travel because of suppliers, because we have 1,000 bus partners. The teams are in contact with them. And obviously, if I go to a country, I love to speak to 1 or 2 bus partners, but I don't have a role there. So my traveling is limited to team and investors to a certain extent. Therefore, that gives me time to also be at home. So I try to take at least an hour or something like that, actively deciding, okay, now I'm at home and I'm not working. But Flix is a big part of my life, and I don't need to separate that much. My phone is a Flix wrap, and you usually get an answer from me in an hour. And the most time, the longest time you don't get an answer is if I'm sitting in a podcast or an interview.
So you are not establishing any rules or boundaries between your work or personal life, like you don't answer your phone after 7 or...
No, I think this is an amazing job and I love it. And it comes with a certain responsibility. And the answer is, if I'm not sleeping, then you will get an answer, always. And it will rather take 10 minutes than an hour. I don't expect that from everyone around me, to be very honest. But I think if you're really taking a lot of responsibility, getting a job which you like, then saying, okay, after 6 I don't answer emails, I think that's not the right thing. I don't expect people to do night shifts all the time. That's not about it. I mean, no one can work 70, 80 hours for years. I don't think that is sustainable working. But in the philosophy of we are building something, we are creating an amazing company and we take responsibility, then I don't count the hours and I obviously answer to emails and Teams and messages very instantly.
So you never feel like you want to have a break from FlixBus, just switch off everything and not see a green color anymore?
No, I think I would get nervous. I tried that once, and I was after 8 years of founding the company, I did really a time off, and I had a schedule in place. I was in Thailand. It was my first travel after 8 years, which was not business travel and was a real holiday. So obviously I traveled over a weekend somewhere, but a proper holiday I haven't done for 7, 8 years. And said my first holiday, I want to be offline for always 2 days offline, 1 day online, and I only read emails in a certain period of time. So I tried that. And I was in Thailand. It was amazing, and the team handled it well. When I came back, COVID struck. And so maybe, and I know it has nothing to do with each other, but I better stay online.
Has anything changed since then? Do you go for holidays on regular basis now? Or is it once every 8 years?
No, I do holidays. Meanwhile, every year over Christmas and New Year's Eve, which is the best time to do holiday from my perspective, because you can fly somewhere where it's sunny. You have 3 weeks where usually business is doing great, because Christmas, New Year's Eve, people travel, it's peak season. But there's actually in my job not a lot to do, because I mean it's all operationally. So operationally there's a ton to do, but I have no operational role in that sense. So the team is handling it well, and it's the quiet time where you don't have meetings, where a lot of people are on holiday, and these are the 2-3 weeks where you can actually get out and don't have to manage something. And so yes, I try to do that every year. And that's kind of my break. And in between, I sometimes, so I don't do meetings on a weekend if it's not urgently required, which usually it's not. But besides that, I'm totally fine, and I love what I'm doing, and therefore I think it's a marathon what we're doing. But I think nothing is against sprinting a bit the marathon.
André, you are in Warsaw today. And Flix in Poland is present for almost 7 years now. What is specific about Polish market? Like from your perspective, was it difficult to grow business here?
There's a funny anecdote which I never told someone, I believe at least. When I spoke to German bus companies in the evening of the market deregulation, I met a bus partner in Berlin, or potential bus partner in Berlin, and he liked the business model, and he liked the idea, and then he wanted to sign, and then he said, I won't sign, because when we start that, there will be a moment in time when, because Berlin is close to Poland, when the Polish companies will come and they have a cross-border network, and they will build a domestic network, and I'm scared that the Polish companies will take the business away from what we have built in Germany. So he didn't sign because of being scared of Poland as a bus company, as a bus country, because it was established, companies were there doing...
We have a lot of bus companies.
Yeah, a lot of cross-border businesses, so it was an established market. I didn't think about that anecdote for a very long time, but when we started Poland, it was very obvious that it was the first big market where there was an established network, because all others were kind of market openings, and Poland was the only one which was not a market opening, but a real entry into an established market. And I think the success that we had in Poland is remarkable because we have grown the business to a level which we would have never anticipated before. So I think the Polish market over-delivered on our expectations in that sense. And funnily enough, in some way like this bus company anticipated, because it's a much more international business than anticipated. And if you look at the Polish network that we run today, no one would have dared to paint that network. I mean, the German network is kind of how I could have painted it on day one. The Polish network I would not have dared to paint in terms of how far lines go, how dense the network is, how important Poland is for us in Europe. So yes, it's a very special market for us and very important in the middle of Europe as a key bus market for us. We're still a lot of room to grow.
So this bus partner from Berlin was right.
He was kind of right, but he was also kind of wrong because he was scared that it would threaten the Flix success. But it became an integral part of the Flix success, so he was right and wrong at the same time.
Today you are in Warsaw, but tomorrow you're going to be in Kiev. Is that true? You're taking a bus to Kiev today?
Yes, I'm taking a 15 hours night trip to Kiev. I'm going to stay one day and then take another 15 hours night trip back to Warsaw.
And what's your motivation to go there right now?
The same like for all my travels, as I stated. I mean, the main reason is team. We have an amazing team in Kiev, which we had prior to war, which has grown through the war. I've never been there. Daniel, my co-founder, who will be with me on that trip, he has been in Ukraine. I've never been there. For me, it's a very emotional topic. I mean, when we opened Ukraine, it was a pitch from the Polish team, and I had no strong opinions in that sense. I followed that recommendation. I followed that pitch. It developed into a business. Prior to the war, a small business. Meanwhile, a relevant sized business. But for me, it's more than a business. I think it's sometimes in history you have to choose sides, and nothing is black and white, and a lot of gray. I think on the Ukraine-Russia war, there is a black and white, and there's one aggressor and one country that is defending itself. And therefore, for me, it's very emotional to go to Kiev. I have a certain level of respect, to be very honest. But nevertheless, I have even more respect for the Ukrainians that fight for the freedom, that fight for Europe. And therefore, it's for me very important to be on the ground, meet the team, get a feeling from the country, and also show our commitment to Ukraine by me being present there, because it's important to say something, but it's also important to act.
Yeah, I'm sure the team there will be very excited and very happy to have you there, as much as we are happy to have you here today. Okay, very last question. Our next guest in the next episode of FlixChat will be your friend, another FlixBus co-founder, Daniel Kraus. Is there any particular question that you think we could ask him? Maybe a funny story that he could tell us?
I think what you could ask him is, and I always say we disrupted a whole industry with technology, but I underestimated the power of technology 12 years back. And I think most people did. And I would ask him an honest statement if he would have foreseen what Flix Tech became and how important it become. Because yes, we believe we need a tech guy and technology will be important. But I think the way how it shaped out with machine learning, with AI, with hundreds of engineers building a global tech platform, I would have never believed that. And therefore, I would be interested in his honest answer. Daniel, 12 years back, what was your perspective on technology for Flix? Did you think it will be important? Do you think it will be roughly in the magnitude that we have seen there? What would you have expected? So the honest answer would be very interesting for me as well.
Thank you. We'll definitely ask him that. Well, thank you for joining me today. Good luck with your trip to Ukraine. It was really great to have you here.
Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure to be here, and it's always great to be in Poland.
Hello, everybody. It's been 3 days, and André has just came back from his first bus trip to Kiev. André, how was your trip?
I mean, it was a special trip for me. First of all, it was a very long bus trip and 2 long bus trips in essentially one day. But it was also a good experience to go there, not only because we delivered a really good product between Poland and Ukraine, but also because it was great to finally see the team, to be on the ground. I mean, we speak so much about Ukraine, about Kiev. My main meeting room in Munich is named Kiev, so it was for me very special to be finally there.
So that was your first time Ukraine, and it happened to be during the war. How was that? Weren't you afraid to go there?
Obviously, I would have wanted to go earlier. I mean, I usually try to travel to all the offices every year or every 2 years, and then we opened the Ukraine business 2019, and then there was COVID, no traveling, and then the war started, so I was far too long not there. For me, it was very important, especially to meet the team, to also meet a couple of bus partners to get a feeling on the ground. So, yes, I had a certain respect, but I also had a very good feeling that we have a team on the ground who can give us good recommendations in terms of that it's safe to travel and safe to come. And for me, at the end, this was more important that I want to be there than of some residual risk.
And you took a FlixBus, right? How was the FlixBus ride to Kiev?
I took 2 night rides from Warsaw to Kiev and then back to Warsaw. And I think especially comparing to also other carriers that I've seen then in Kiev bus station, I think we deliver an outstanding product. I mean, it's the same quality standards that you would have experienced everywhere else in Europe. I mean, even I think on the drivers, it was on top of what I've experienced on some of the routes. I think we deliver an extraordinary product for the market, and I think this is also the way forward. I mean, we should be in the situation that we deliver in Ukraine a product which is far better than the market at a lower cost, and this is what we and the team are doing. And therefore, I was very happy, even if 15 hours bus ride then with a 3.5 hours break on the customs is challenging after you had a 12 hours ride to the city. But I sleep well in buses, and it was really a pleasant journey.
Great to hear that. And what was the reaction to your visit from officials or bus partners that you met?
From my impression, many of the people I met, being it politicians, being it journalists, being it Americans, being it the local team, they appreciate that we come because I think they don't take it for granted that you go there. And for me, I had no certain reason. There was nothing that forced me to go to Kiev in that sense that there was a big deal to be made or something like that. I just wanted to go there. I wanted to talk to people. I try to be helpful to the team on the ground, but nothing forced me to. It was our decision that we want to go there, and I think this was very well appreciated. And it shows also our commitment to Ukraine, not only in the last couple of years, but also in the years and decades to come.
So which moment of the trip was the most emotional one for you?
There were a lot of emotional moments, to be honest. It's always, if you speak with people about what happened in the last couple of years, I think that's the most touching thing, can be the bus partner that was in occupied territory and that was expressing that they were grateful that we supported them in these times, that we helped them to rebuild the business. This is very emotional because, yes, I remember obviously the approval that we did in terms of, yes, we pre-transfer money, we helped them to rebuild. You know this technical process, but then hearing from them what it meant for them, what it meant that FlixBus stood up to them in that moment, this is very, very emotional. And also towards the team, if you speak with them, you remember the times when it was tough, especially at the beginning, but then having them reflecting on how they feel, what it makes with them that there is war in the country, this is very, very emotional. So it's less about the business, it's more about the people.
Is there anything that will change significantly after the visit for you personally or for your commitment to Ukraine?
For me, it's important that I take all these impressions with me, and usually if I'm in a country, it gives you a better feeling of what is the potential, what are the barriers, and I think I've far better understood now how we tackle the barriers, that we have to make this a very, very large business. And I believe Ukraine can be one of the largest bus markets in Europe for Flix, and we should have a clear path towards it. I have the feeling the team has that path forward. And yes, it will help me to support them even better in the future to get there. And I think we can be proud of what we achieved in the first 5 years. But what I told everyone I met is, we will come back, and in 5 years we will sit here, and in 10 years we will sit here, and I'm sure we will have delivered on our promises, and we will be proud of what we have built in Ukraine.
I really hope this will be true. One day we will have a beautiful network without war going on.
I absolutely believe that, and I think a lot of people I met believe that too.
Thank you for joining me once again after your trip. And if you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did, please like FlixChat wherever you get your podcast, and don't miss next episode, especially that you already know who my next guest will be and what question we're going to ask him. Stay tuned.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. We appreciate your time and feedback. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for the latest episodes on all your favorite streaming platforms.